I learned over time that I learned by doing. I think at first I spent a lot of time researching and trying to understand different things. And then I realized over time that it was actually just diving into the actual question and really figuring out what I needed to know to move on to the next step was the most effective way to tackle the problem.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Intersection podcast, presented by the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business. I'm your host, Prem, a second-year MBA student here at Scheller, and I'm really excited to kick off a new season and semester with you all. So, to kick off this semester, we're starting with our first episode with our returning guests, Lauren, Leo, and Angelica, and we're going to be discussing their internship experiences over the summer. So if you remember one of our last episodes, we discussed about, what their expectations were. And now we're going to kind of match it up to what their experience actually was like. So thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate that you're back on the couch. The first thing I'd like to start off with is just a reminder for our guests and our listeners. Where did you intern this summer and what was your role? So let's start with you, Lauren.
Sure. So I interned at Delta Airlines this summer, and I was on the in-flight entertainment team under customer experience design, which is really cool because that was my first choice of what kind of experience I could have. And I'll get into my project later, I'm guessing.
Awesome. Leo?
Yeah, I worked as a generalist consultant at BCG, and I was working on a data strategy project.
Awesome. And Angelica?
I have to say, we're back. I was a customer experience summer associate at Citibank.
Amazing. So that's a good refresher for our listeners there. I'd just love to kind of learn a little bit more. So you mentioned the projects that you're on. What were the key responsibilities that you had during your internship, and what was your role like?
I'll go first. So BCG really tries to treat their interns as full-time employees. So they will assign you to a case that goes usually from beginning to end, and you do all the sorts of tasks that you would do as a consultant full-time. I got to travel to the client side. I got to drive projects, drive modules, and do a lot of Excel, a lot of slides. But essentially, you do everything that a full-time employee would do.
Nice.
Yeah, I can go. So my responsibility, my role was to evaluate a new tool that was going to be used in the Delta Sync Wi-Fi for You section, and build out a launch strategy for that tool and understand different stakeholder needs and procedures that would need to be in place to make that rollout successful.
Awesome.
So I was specifically on the customer experience team, and then within that, on market research. And my role was looking at some of the previous literature that the market research team had created and just devising a strategy to reorganize that. Nice.
Amazing. So what I'd love to hear is just a little bit about your backgrounds before going into these roles. And I'm curious as to, what did you do before starting your MBA, and then how that compared to what you did in your internship, and what were your expectations and maybe how were they challenged?
I worked at the Federal Reserve before business school, so obviously the Federal Reserve and moving to a bank are incredibly aligned because they're both financial institutions to some degree. But what was cool is the work that I did at the Fed was very different than the work that I got to do at Citi. So in between the Fed and going to Citi, I worked at a company called CHEP, and that's where I discovered my love for customer experience, driving insights about the market. And I hadn't previously been able to really shift that path into a consumer-facing role. So being at Citi really helped me combine the two careers that I had previously before the MBA to the one that I really wanted to create following the MBA.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How about you, Leo?
I'm an engineer, so everything was pretty new for me. Everything is pretty new for me in the MBA. And of course, I'm interested in business topics, but all the formal learning on business jargon and all of that I learned here, and I got to apply a lot of that over there already. So that's some relief. But a lot of the stuff I just had to learn from scratch as well. Yeah. So what they call the consultant toolkit, right, is pretty complex, and you spend the first several weeks just trying to catch up to that. I was staffed on a project that had to do with my background, in energy. So at least that part got I got to use some of that in the project as well. But yeah, just learning a lot from scratch and just developing very quickly. You don't have a lot of time to
Yeah,
to
no,
catch up.
absolutely. Similarly to myself as well, I also did my internship in consulting. Similar, not a background necessarily in, at least industry wise.
Yeah.
Mine was actually different. So again, it was very much at the beginning, try and get to grips with it, and then be able to move forward. How about you, Lauren?
My background is an elementary teacher, so I think what was similar was that my role was really to kind of create a story about how we could move forward with this tool, and that's similar to what you're doing with education. Is you're explaining something, making sure that it can be understood by everyone in the room with different levels of understanding of that tool.
Yeah.
As well as like the depth of knowledge required to actually implement it. So I would say like catering to different members of within the audience of storytelling and teaching was similar. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that kind of brings me on to my next question, which is like, based on the expectations that you may have had going in and maybe some of the skill gaps that you may have had that were required for the roles, what do you think was kind of the most challenging aspect of your internship, and kind of what things did you do and people that you lent on to kind of help you kind of overcome those challenges?
Mine is interesting because, so for me, I moved to New York City for my internship, and sometimes my biggest challenges weren't even exactly just like the role. It was, so I graduated in 2021 from undergrad. So right out of the pandemic, my first job was mostly remote. My second job was mostly remote. I didn't really have an office culture, to going into a 49-floor skyscraper with thousands of people coming in all at once. And I'm from the South. I went to the Northeast. The different kind of cultural expectations at work. Do you have water cooler talk? Do you not have water cooler talk? And, you're trying to make those connections. So sometimes for me, like my challenges were even beyond the exact role that I was doing, but how I was navigating a new environment. How did I overcome that? I think just by experience and giving myself grace and like showing up to work every single day, just willing to take on whatever challenge was in front of me. And then seeing it as like a new life experience, right?
Yeah.
And something that I won't really ever get. I'll never have a summer MBA internship ever again.
Yeah.
So really taking on that mindset and staying positive.
You mentioned something interesting there, that you moved out of Atlanta to do your internship. How did you enjoy that? How did you like New York?
I absolutely love New York. Well, I would say I have a love-hate relationship. Sometimes I'd walk down the street and like air conditioning water would fall on me, or like my train would not work. But then there'd be amazing times where you stumble upon a free concert in the park, or I went to like an art show and like met so many other cool people doing their internships. So it's an amazing city to do summer work, and I'm just so grateful to have had the opportunity.
Yeah, or even a free silent disco. And
oh my gosh, wait, yes.
Angelica and I actually met up in New York. I was there for 1 week for my internship as well. So we went to a silent
Prem,
disco.
and Lauren doing silent discos at Lincoln Center, which is pretty iconic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be hard to beat that one, huh, Leo? But over to you.
I will second the lifestyle comment that you made, actually, because for consultant it makes a big difference, right? I was traveling Monday through Thursday.
Yeah.
I had to stay over the weekend a couple times in the client side as well, so it could be quite tiring.
Where did you travel?
I traveled to Florida.
Okay.
So it wasn't that long of a trip, but when you're traveling that much and sometimes your schedule is inconsistent, it can get pretty tiring. And also the hours are pretty inconsistent as well in consulting, as you know. So sometimes you start early and you end by 6. Sometimes you have to go a little later. Sometimes you have time to go home, eat dinner, do something, watch something, take a shower, and then you have to get back into work. So it was a learning experience for me in the first couple of weeks, trying to get out of that mentality of I leave the office, I'm winding down, to I gotta always be running at some base level, and if something comes up, I gotta be ready to do it as well. So that was the main challenge for me. But the people at BCG have been great at, especially my principal, the person who was leading the case that I was on, has been great, explaining that with the change of mentalities that you should have when you work in consulting, and how you can take care of those things, because you're not, wherever you are, you're not the first one to be going through those challenges. So when we mentioned resources, you asked about what resources. I would say the people in my case, so the other consultants in my case that have been there for anywhere from 6 months to several years, and my manager as well, were great people to try to help me walk through it.
Nice. Amazing. How about at Delta?
Yeah, so I had a wonderful team and got a lot of mentorship. I think what was challenging to me in an unexpected way was really learning how to dive into a more ambiguous problem question, especially within a topic area that's completely new to me.
Yeah.
I think I learned over time that I learned by doing. I think at first I spent a lot of time researching and trying to understand different things. And then I realized over time that it was actually just diving into the actual question and really figuring out what I needed to know to move on to the next step was the most effective way to tackle the problem. So I definitely learned a lot. And if I were to solve a similar type of problem again, I would approach it in a different way.
Nice. I really like that as well. And I think some of what you mentioned there as well, being a new domain, a new company, all of you experienced that this summer. One thing that often comes up a lot, and even conversations that I've had with the first years already, has been around imposter syndrome. It's something that comes up all the time when talking about jobs. Was that something that you guys had when you kind of went into these roles? And again, like, how did you kind of go about navigating that feeling, even in a new city or in a new type of routine like you guys had?
For me, stepping back into an internship role was very hard, having had work experience before, and gave me imposter syndrome in a way I hadn't really experienced it before, because I knew that I had the credibility and the pedigree to support kind of my voice in the conversation. But you're also trying to navigate a new environment at the same time. And so I found myself like wanting to ask questions or wanting to take the lead, but also trying to not ruffle, I don't want to say ruffle feathers, but not like, what's the best
maybe
word?
Overstep your mark.
Overstep my mark, yeah. And so I think that's hard to like, because, you know, when you think about working, having been a working professional, you're like, cool, I'm going in as if I'm going to be here for the next year. Yeah. Right? Which just isn't the case, I think, when you're doing an internship for 2 months. And so that presented itself like a new like level of imposter syndrome where I'm like, oh, I have years of experience, but what does that mean for my place where I am now? Like, maybe I am here really just to like learn, and maybe I don't need to be so like gung-ho asking tons of questions. I constantly battled with that this summer.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. How about you, Leo?
Yeah, I would say I also experienced it in a different way than I did before, and I would say it has to do with the client interactions, because not only do you have to project confidence to your peers, you have to project confidence to the client as well.
Of course, yeah.
And the clients know you're new, right?
Yeah.
Like they see these people coming in and leaving 8 weeks later. They know you're an intern.
Yeah.
But you should obviously project the confidence that you have for the good work that you're doing.
Yeah.
In terms of doing the job itself, I didn't think I felt it that much, because a lot of people have backgrounds that are completely unrelated to business as well. So, and the company gave us a lot of resources to try to catch up. So I think in that respect, it was pretty mild.
Nice.
Yeah. I'll add on and say that I did notice myself struggling with it in terms of my communication. I think this summer was a great growth experience because I realized that when you communicate confidently, it makes everyone else's life around you easier, because when you convey that self-confidence, self-trust, other people are able to say, okay, she's got this. I'm going to focus on what I need to do. And so just when I realized that self-confidence was not fake or a mask necessarily, even though we all have to hype ourselves up. When I realized it was helping other people, it became a lot easier to step into that.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm curious, after all, we're all MBA students, and we've been learning. We've had a bunch of classes in our first year. Has there been any MBA class, MBA coursework, anything that you've learned throughout the course of your MBA that actually proved to be quite helpful for your internship? Or was it just kind of something where it was like an amalgamation of skills that you kind of have built up that just kind of transpired?
I'll give one: Financial and Managerial Accountant by Ryan Blunk. That one is
what a class.
Great class. And I caught myself several times during the internship looking at companies' 10Ks and trying to figure out what they're doing from that, reading the footnotes, everything that Blunk taught us. So
there you go.
Having no background in accounting or business in general, like I would have never known to check a 10K before that class.
And how to read one.
And how to read one.
Statements.
Exactly. How to read the statements. So, yeah. So that was really helpful.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah.
I think you can apply the strategic method to anything in your work environment, even if it's not necessarily like named a strategic project.
Yeah.
I think back to our strategy practicum that we had to do with the different companies and just the steps of researching, coming up with hypotheses, testing those things, getting feedback, iterating on that process, like, all the things, thinking about downstream impacts, thinking about upstream impacts, like all of the components that go into making a strategic decision and thinking critically was really helpful in all of the projects that I did at Citi.
That's great.
I think that the strategy class that we take during the spring semester is really helpful because you're working with a team, thinking through an ambiguous problem, and during the presentation, you're crafting a narrative that drives the audience to a certain outcome of what your recommendations are. And I think that's great preparation for the internship.
Yeah, and that was very similar to what you had to do for your capstone. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. Amazing. So again, kind of on the back of that as well, was there anything that maybe you had to learn specifically in the internship, like a professional skill, for example? I know you've already alluded to the idea of speaking directly to a client and exuding a level of confidence in your speaking as well. But what else? What other types of professional skills do you think you've learned that maybe you didn't cultivate in your previous work experience as well?
I think presentation was a big deal for me in terms of everything that you do as a consultant ends up in a slide.
Yeah.
That's what they say. So you got to choose the right number of slides, choose which slides to share with which audience. And we do have some degree of that in Scheller, but to the extent that we were doing it, we just had to kind of go learn the job and ask other people, try to find your way through it.
So for me, I feel like this almost answers the last question as well. I employed a lot of project management skills that I hadn't previously used. And I learned project management here at Scheller, and then it helped me in my summer internship because, I mentioned the one project at the beginning of the podcast, but I also had a separate project with the marketing team. And then I had some just general like ad hoc work that my team would hand to me as a way for me to learn. And no one was really, there to say, okay, do this at this point, the next point, like these things need to be done before, these things need to be done after. And I think I had always approached it as just like a to-do list and like, I don't know, cross things off rapid fire. I was much more methodical and thought out in planning out my summer, thanks to the project coursework at Scheller.
Nice. One thing I would say as well, I mean, even from my own experience, I felt like it was quite interesting how going into these MBA internships, there's a kind of level of responsibility on you already, having come from a background of experience, whether you know the functional
strange,
area.
Isn't it? All of a sudden you own something that you have to
exactly, and you're either kind of owning a work stream, which would be kind of something we could relate to in consulting, but even project managing or having to kind of run with an ambiguous problem by yourself without a team. And I know we've already discussed about that kind of situations that can transpire in some of these other internships, and I think that kind of can be something where it's kind of really an opportunity for you to grow as a leader. And I think that's one thing that I found was really valuable from my internship too.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I guess one thing I wanted to talk about, which is a question I also get asked a lot, which is around, okay, you're coming into this role, maybe with the background, maybe without the background. And there's always this balance of, how can I grow? How can I ask for help? And there's this balance between being proactive and then asking for guidance. And I'm curious as when you came across challenges, when you came across questions and problems that you had to answer yourselves, what kind of barometer did you use within yourself to decide, okay, maybe it's the time that, okay, I've tried, but, I could use some guidance? Or would it be like, actually, this is something I feel like I can do myself? So I'm curious as kind of maybe how that looked during your internships.
Yeah, I can start. I think during my internship, I tried to get really clear on, have I tried to figure this out myself? And what are the paths forward that I think would work well to solve this issue or solve this problem? But I think at the same time, it was still helpful for me, and I think important to cross-check with my manager, because when something's important to the project, I want to make sure that what I'm recommending or the solution I came up with is actually going to be a good one for the team. So I think it was always a balance of being proactive, but still definitely checking in and making sure that your recommendation makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I would say do first, ask for forgiveness later is what I did.
Nice.
So a lot of so BCG has this hypothesis-driven culture, right, where you have a problem and you're supposed to go to your supervisor and say, hey, this is the problem. This is how I'm thinking about it. This is my hypothesis. Do you think this is a good solution? And if not, redirect me. Right. This is the ideal, but in the real world, they are busy people as well, so they can't always be babysitting you and looking at everything you're doing. So it was really important for me to get comfortable with, hey, if I can't hear from this person for the next 2 hours, I'm not gonna wait for 2 hours, right? So I'm gonna go do something. Maybe I'll give them a couple options. Think of it from A angle and from B angle, and figure it out later. Ask for forgiveness later for whatever you've done. So this is something that I had to get comfortable with.
Awesome.
Yeah, I echo everything that was said. The only thing I would add was at the beginning of my internship, I sought out all of the resources that Citi had so that I could, in theory, answer all of those questions myself. And I will also add, though, like sometimes when you do go and you seek out the resources, you find the information on your own. I've had, especially in an organization that is as large as Citi, where you might even ask people who have been there for years, right? Yeah. And they still might not have the answer, and they are kind of like back to the drawing board of like just being resourceful and just using the information at hand to make your best judgment. And I think you also have to rely on the merits that you've gained in your past experiences to know like you have a good sense of intuition sometimes of what's the best way to go. So I also rested on that a little bit as well.
Makes sense. Cool. One question I do want to ask, and we don't have so much longer left, but there's two questions I want to ask. One is, so think about you're giving now, you've had 1 year of your MBA program, you're going into your second. A lot of the first years that are coming into the program, they're going to be coffee chatting with you like crazy because they want to know about your experience. But if you could only give them one piece of advice throughout their journey, throughout whatever they maybe find as an internship, or even, the process of getting an internship, what would that one piece of advice be? And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be something specifically that you learned this summer. It could have been something that you even learned last year. But that's a question I'm getting in all my coffee chats. And I think I'd be very curious to hear yours.
So throughout the summer, we at Citi had the opportunity to hear from what they called like legends live. We heard from like Larry Fink of BlackRock. And at the end of our internship, we heard from Jane Fraser, who's the CEO of Citi. And she had this great advice, which was your career will be measured in decades of time and not 2 months of a summer or 2-year increments. Yeah. And that really resonated with me because I think it helps take a lot of the pressure off of yourself to, succeed, whatever that might be for yourself in the months of the internship, and to just stay open to the opportunities to learn. And the reason I think that's applicable if you're a first year is because it also helps you in the process of finding an internship that you might learn something in a company, in a place that you never thought you would learn from. Yeah. Right. And overall, that's just one piece of the very long career that you are creating.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
and to second that, the greatest asset that you get at Georgia Tech is your class and your classmates. So even if you don't get an internship, the internship that you want or the full-time offer that you want, you're going to be able to do so much more, unlock so much more because of the network that you've built here. So that's the most important thing, really. I would put that above everything else in the internship search. Is just like connect with your classmates, see what they're doing, try to understand where you fit within that ecosystem, and go with that.
I like that.
Yeah, and I would say put special effort into managing your thoughts because your thoughts play such a big role in how you're able to show up, whether it's in your internship or during classes. And I would say really taking the time to tend to how you're talking to yourself makes a big difference. So, yeah.
Amazing. So as we wrap up, the final thing I want to ask is, you all had a great summer, and actually, funnily enough, all of you traveled. So I'm just curious, is like, what is your favorite experience of your summer? And it doesn't have to be to do with your internship specifically. Like, what did you do over the course of your internship that you loved and was your favorite moment? Just so our listeners can know.
So I can go first because I did a lot of cool stuff over the summer, one of which was a Morgan Wallen concert.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
But that one's, surprisingly enough, that wasn't my favorite. I liked when we went shooting the hooch. For those who don't know, the Chattahoochee River goes down through Atlanta, and you can rent tubes and you can go down the river for like 2-3 hours. So we did that at BCG as part of a consultant affiliation event.
That's awesome.
So that was a lot of fun.
And what was your take on Morgan Wallen?
It is pretty mid.
You're not a fan. Fair enough.
Some clever lyrics, though.
Sure.
We can talk about that later.
Okay. Lauren?
Yeah, I think it was really cool to see how flying on standby with Delta works. I got really lucky. Like, there were several times when I was the last person on standby who got on the plane. Had some, like, a day when I was coming back from New York and there was a big IROP, which means like irregular operations. And so I wasn't going to make any flights on Sunday coming back. So thankfully my team was flexible. I came back really early Monday morning and just like took a layover to Boston, hoping I could get back from Boston, and that worked well. So just kind of navigating that experience was really fun.
And a couple of times in first class as well doesn't hurt. Angelica?
Yes. So I went to this show tunes bar in New York called Marie Crisis, and I met Jim Cashman, who is the new Flo. He's like the male Flo on the Progressive commercials.
Okay.
So it was like a very like short run into fame, I guess. Like, yeah, it was. Anyways, it was just...
That's kind of niche. I still don't know my
niche
American
New
commercials
York
very
thing.
well.
Oh,
But
I'll have to show you.
I like it. Yeah, you can show me. My highlight was of the summer as well. I was also traveling weekly. So, getting to go out to California on a weekly basis was a lot of travel. But again, similarly, I did have some weekends where I got to stay over. But yeah, I did lots of traveling over the summer. One weekend, I actually went to Toronto as well, which was probably my favorite. So yeah, I'd like to go back again. It's a great city, but it's probably pretty too cold in the wintertime, but in the summer it's beautiful. So yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. That was great chatting to you again, and maybe we can get you guys on the couch for a third time. Let's see. But thank you so much, and we really appreciate it. Thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Intersection podcast. I encourage you all to subscribe to Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and watch our videos on YouTube. Please subscribe. And we will catch you in the next one. Thank you so much.